Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. This is our horror movie podcast that we do every week, most of the year. In October, of course, in the Octoberthon, we do an episode almost or hopefully every single day. So we've been working through the Psycho franchise, which means we're getting towards the end of the month. So hopefully you've been having fun with all the extra reviews we've been putting up. I am Peter, of course, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, the scandalous Timothy.
Hello, how are you?
Wonderful. That was so the enthusiasm that comes off this man at the best of times is just delightful.
What am I supposed to say? What are you...
I don't know. Say something with enthusiasm. Say, hey guys, I'm happy to be here, or something. I don't care if it's true. Just say it.
Do you want me to act like I'm calling in and about to tell you about how I've killed before and how I plan to kill again?
Tim, I could be mistaken,
yeah,
but I think you might be foreshadowing the plot of the movie we're going to talk about. Just a sneaking suspicion. Something just tells me that you're playing coy with my feelings here. Yes.
I'd have to know what movie we're doing in order to do that.
Well, we're doing Psycho 4, the beginning, because I thought that was pretty obvious given that I said we'd work through the Psycho franchise. So, this is the only one that's left. Well, that's not entirely true. There is technically the remake, which we're not doing this October. We'll maybe do that at some point down the line.
November.
Are you committing us?
It is a Thanksgiving movie.
Is it?
Well, he has a knife, so it's kind of like when you're carving the turkey.
It's got a knife. It's kind of Thanksgiving-esque.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I'm sorry. What do you use when you carve your turkey? A chib?
Use a knife like every day of the year. That's not specific to Thanksgiving. If anything, I think of Halloween because of Michael Myers and his big butcher knife.
Well, maybe we'll have to put it. We'll leave it up to our patrons. Maybe we'll have a special Patreon vote to decide whether Psycho's a Thanksgiving movie or not.
Oh my god. So we are going to be talking about Psycho 4. We will start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you a warning in the middle before we go into spoilers. Psycho's a masterpiece. It's a classic. Psycho 2 is a surprisingly great sequel. Psycho 3 not as good, but does have some interesting things in there. It's not a complete waste of time. There's more sequel-y, but that's what it is.
It's fun. Yeah.
Psycho 4 is interesting because it is actually a made-for-TV movie. It was made for Showtime in 1990, and I believe Anthony Perkins, who of course is back as Norman Bates, he wanted to direct again, and they said no. They didn't want to do that. So Mick Garris is actually the director of this. Mick Garris, who very recently we watched Nightmare Cinema. Obviously, by the time you see this, it'll be a bit longer, but for us, it's not been that long since we watched that movie. Yeah. And he, of course, was the curator of that and directed one of the segments, although he directed easily the worst segment of the whole movie. So Mick Garris here directing Psycho 4. We'll get into this. The premise of this one, which I think ignores 2 and 3. I think this is a bit of a Halloween H2O situation where it kind of ignores 2 and 3. I think it does. It's kind of hard to tell, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might ignore them. But it's basically Norman Bates now actually is married, and he calls into a radio show which is like a true crime kind of thing. But this particular episode on this night, the focus is matricide, which of course is what he did. He killed his mother. And he calls in to talk about it. And we have a couple of actors here. CCH Pounder, who's the host of the radio show. Many people might know her from The Shield. She was a big character on that show.
Oh, yeah.
Later on. Have you ever seen The Shield? You're agreeing with me.
Yeah, she's great.
Have you seen it? I didn't realize you'd seen The Shield.
Oh, yeah, I watched The Shield.
I had no idea you'd seen The Shield.
Yeah, this was like back in the day when I actually like had time to watch TV shows. Shield's really good.
I've never heard of you talking about a good TV show before.
Yeah, now,
this is weird.
I mean, nowadays I seldom watch anything that's not horror related. But back in the day, I had more time and I'd watch all these kind of things.
Yeah, Shield's a great, fantastic show. I mean, I think people might write it off because they think, oh, it's just a cop show, but no, it's actually a proper serialized show. And in many ways, I'd say that if you like something like Breaking Bad, watch The Shield. It's kind of in that same ballpark of serialized storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, who among us doesn't love the crazy, quirky adventures of Vic Mackey and his fellow officers in blue?
Hey, Walton Goggins is in there. He's really good.
Oh yeah. Good.
Do you know who I heard? What's really funny about that is obviously people crack a lot of jokes about this Shield and then Agents of Shield because it's like, oh, it's confusing them. But Clark Gregg, who plays Coulson, was in the Shield. And was he was one of the people that was interrogated. I can't remember the characters' names, but the main detective who always did the interrogations, he interrogates him, and he was like a granny killer and like assaulter. Okay. And so, but what's funny about that is that in the last season of Agents of Shield, actually not last season because season 6 just finished. Season 5 of Agents of Shield, there was an actor from this Shield in it. The female cop who was in uniform in the show. Again, I've forgotten all the names. But she was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. last season, and there was a scene where she interrogates Coulson, and it felt like it was like almost... So now you can even joke like, I watched the S.H.I.E.L.D. Oh, which one? The one with Clark Gregg where he's interrogated by this actress. Like, you could almost crack a joke about how... I don't know what I'm trying to say, except that there's a funny connection between them. Anyway, so yeah, she's great.
That's funny.
Yeah, she's great. She's in here. CCH Pounder. Warren Frost from Twin Peaks is in here, who is actually playing the Doctor from the end of the first Psycho movie, who gives us all the exposition. Of course, he's much older, but he's actually the Doctor on Twin Peaks. That's where I know him from. And then bizarrely, John Landis has like a weird small role in this.
Yeah.
He's like the producer in the radio booth. He doesn't have a lot of lines, but he's just kind of there like the whole time.
I think he's friends with Mick Garris, so that would explain it. But also maybe not like super. Well, I guess he was known at the time, but one of the younger versions of Norman, is it Henry Thomas that plays him?
Yes.
Is that the name of the actor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, who obviously, I think, he was the kid from E.T., right?
I'm just checking. Yeah, he's E.T.
So I guess he would have been known for that at the time, but I mean, more relevant to us now, he's one of the dudes in The Haunting of Hill House. Oh,
really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I could, I'm looking at the photo now. You're right. I can see it. He's, Yeah. He's the dad in the flashbacks of Hill House, yeah. In fact, I'm just looking at his credits. He's actually going to be Dr. Midnight on the Stargirl TV show.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, he's still working. He's working. He's got 2020, 2019 stuff all lined up. He's doing all right for himself. Oh, he was also the priest in Ouija: Origin of Evil, which I actually think I can picture him in that movie now.
Okay.
And that was actually also Mike Flanagan who directed The Haunting of Hill House. Yeah. So, and it's not the only actor from that movie who ended up in that show either.
Yeah, he definitely has like his stable of actors he likes to use. So that makes sense.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I didn't realize that was him. Obviously, he's much younger, so it's not as obvious. But
yeah.
Yeah, so there's a few actors in there, but it's a made-for-TV Showtime movie, and it's Norman calling into this radio show to talk about his past and give some insight. And a lot of the movie is actually flashbacks to younger Norman doing his first kill. It's actually kind of a weird order because it starts after his mother's already dead. Like the first flashback is after his mother's already dead, and then it goes further back to when his mother's alive, and then it's like that for most of the movie, and then we go back to like his second kill like quite late on. It's weird. It's like a weird order, the sequence, but So that's what the movie is. It's a lot of flashbacks. So most of the killings and stuff all take place in the flashbacks, and the present day stuff is just Norman on the phone talking to the radio host, barring a little bit at the end. So that's the gist of it. I think part of the reason for that is because Anthony Perkins, I think, was starting to his health was deteriorating. I think around the time they were filming this, and I think that they kind of wrote it to just make it easy on him. That he's just in a kitchen on a phone for like most of the movie.
I could be wrong, but I want to say maybe he might have even passed away like shortly after this movie.
I'll click on him and find out. Let's see what his date of death is. It was 2 years later. He died in 1992.
Oh, okay.
So, and he was only 60 when he died. So,
jeez.
Yeah, died pretty young, unfortunately. So, I mean, the movie, it's a really weird one because, like, I don't necessarily dislike the structure of the film in the sense that I think for a standalone movie, this could be a fine plot. This idea of a killer calling into the radio and talking about his crimes, like, I actually think that's a solid little idea, and it's probably been done, to be honest, in other things. But I don't think it really fits a Psycho movie.
Well, my big problem with it is I do think it's also like an interesting idea, but ultimately it ends up like being completely worthless like by the end of the movie, because I feel like there's no resolution with the radio part, like, because once you get into the last little bit of the movie, it's like almost like that stuff didn't really matter. Like I don't know, I think I wanted maybe more involvement from them, because at first it seems like they're kind of the driving point of the narrative, like they're
it just kind of fades away. You're right. That is kind of weird. Notably, this is the only sequel that actually uses the original music from the first movie, like the main theme and all that. 2 and 3 never did, which is actually kind of odd. But yeah, it does. But the weird thing is that like Norman's not actually going around killing. Obviously, there's a chance that you might at the end. Like that's kind of what it builds up to, and I won't spoil that yet. But obviously it relies on the flashbacks for all the horror stuff. And what's so weird about this movie now is, and I've not watched past the first couple of episodes, but there's like a 5-season TV show that's done this story now that really in depth.
Which is I actually really like that show. It's not necessarily like a good show, like it's kind of like trashy TV, but it was very entertaining to me, which I much prefer that version. Definitely in large part to Vera Farmiga in it, who is just amazing. And the actress that plays Norman's mom in this, she's definitely not bad, but I did not like her take for Norma. It felt like a like almost like she's doing like a British thespian kind of play thing. Like she's just very over dramatic, and everything is like Norman. It's just like it wasn't really working for me.
I'll say I think she was bad in this. I was laughing at a lot of her lines. Honestly, the most entertaining part of this movie for me was just some of the ridiculous shit she was saying. About Norman's penis and other such things.
What'd she call her drink? Like orange flower drink or something?
It was something like that. But no, her yelling, you may have to go for a wee wee at one point at him, was like the moment I was like, okay, I can't take this movie seriously. It's just not, I can't do it. And obviously there's a lot of like prodding that potential incest and all the other things that comes with a story.
It's there's a big lesson in here where it's like, that stuff is a lot more interesting when it's like more subtle and implied at, like once it's like staring you in the face, it's not really something you want to see.
I mean, once where they're holding each other and then he gets an erection and she gets mad at him for having an erection, like once that sort of thing starts happening, it takes it to a whole different place. The whole scene's weird, and part of me is like, well, the way you were wrestling with him on the floor, like, can you really like be surprised? And I suppose in a way you can, because it's your son, but at the same time, the way you talk to him and treat him is not really like a mother. It's very different. There's a whole lot of murkiness going on here that's kind of hard to follow the psychology of it. Ultimately, it feels very made for TV. Is kind of a big thing. It feels very cheap. It feels like they didn't really have a good idea for how to actually do a fourth Psycho movie, and ultimately, like the backstory, I mean, maybe the TV show does it well, maybe the TV show makes stuff out of it, but sometimes I like the backstory to just be the hinted at backstory. I don't need to see it actually play out and like see all the details. You know, so it's just that's kind of frustrating to me. And it also means that we have other actors playing Norman Bates for a lot of the movies. It's not, you know, Anthony Perkins who is Norman freaking Bates. Yeah. So yeah, that kind of sucks. You know, it's definitely the least interesting visually out of the four movies. It's definitely the worst directed of the bunch. And you're the Mick Garris fan, so if you want to jump in and defend him here at any point, you feel free. But this is pretty weak sauce.
Well, like I do love Mick Garris, but I like him more as a person necessarily, and not as much for his movies. Because like, you know, I'm a big fan of his podcast, and you know, he's definitely someone who, you know, knows a lot about horror. Whenever he kind of writes something about horror, speaks about it, you know, he has really good love and insight of the genre, and you know, he like bolsters other people's career and stuff. So I definitely like him for that aspect, but. Unfortunately, it's not like a lot of his movies are, you know, it's not like they're all bad. Like, you know, he has like some fun stuff here, and I think his movies are always watchable. Like, they're never stuff that I'm like, oh, this is, you know, the worst thing ever. But yeah, I would seldom call like most of them that good.
Honestly, looking at his filmography, the highlight is Critters 2.
Critters 2 is like definitely the best. Sleepwalkers is not a good movie, but I think it's fun. I actually do really like The Stand, his version of it. So yeah, I mean, you know, I do like him, but yeah, I mean, I can't really defend a lot of his movies too much. And this is equally, or yeah, definitively, you know, the worst of the sequels. It's at least the other, like 2, you know, I think is like really interesting, and then 3, not necessarily as interesting, but you know, it has some cool stuff for it, and it's not like one that necessarily you're mad at for existing. This, yeah, it's not really doing much. It's just, yeah, visually it's not great. Some of the acting is pretty bad. There's some just straight up like weird choices that you're like, yeah, I didn't need to see that. And ultimately, like you said, like backstories usually are just not like a very interesting part. Like all of the stuff that's in this movie, we kind of assumed, you know, from the first movie. Yeah,
it takes a lot of the mystique out of it, which kind of sucks. I also just one film.
You know what I think actually.
Just one film note on Mick Garris. He's directed a lot of episodes of TV shows for Freeform. He's done like Pretty Little Liars and Shadowhunters, The Mortal Instruments, and all that stuff. He's done a lot of that for some reason.
Interesting.
But feel free, fair enough.
Yeah, and then one thing I was thinking about is because at first I was like, well, I guess this is kind of like, if you have to do another Psycho movie, this is really like the only other thing you can kind of do. But then I started thinking about it, I was like, well, no. You know, I'm assuming people listening to this have already seen Psycho 3, but if you haven't, spoiler alert, at the end of Psycho 3, he goes back to jail, and, you know, I kind of would have wanted to see Norman in jail. Like, I guess maybe, yeah, if his health was an issue and, like, yeah, you didn't want to do it for that reason, that makes sense. But I don't know, like, maybe if he was in jail and, like, started hearing his mother again, or, you know, started having, like, weird episodes or something like that, I think that'd be more interesting than, yeah, kind of just going back here.
Yeah, well, I think it's partly because they're terrified of not having the motel, of not having the house, because
that's true.
The iconic locations of the movie. Yeah. But at a certain point, maybe you just have to move away from it a little bit and do something else. But obviously,
I mean, well, honestly though, like this was a movie that was never made for sequels. Like it's surprising that they got 4 out of these.
I mean, honestly, three ends pretty definitively, and could have just been the end of the franchise. Like 4 feels. I mean, 2 and 3 to an extent are unnecessary because Psycho's just a great standalone movie. You know, like, but like 4 is like very unnecessary. It feels like they just wanted to make one because you know, for the money for the
gotta get people to subscribe to Showtime.
Yes. Which is so weird because it's like a one-off thing, like a movie you only get to show. I mean, you can show it multiple times, but you know, it's not a TV show where it's like, oh, you're hooked for 10 weeks or however long the show's on. So, yeah, very odd, very odd. So yeah, I guess we'll give the spoiler warning because I don't know how much I've got left to say. It's spoiler free. The movie, like, I feel like the main thing we're going to talk about before we get to the other stuff is just all the flashbacks.
Sure.
And they're so disconnected and just kind of like standalone little ideas on their own. There's very little plot that sort of runs through them outside of just Norman keeps getting closer and closer to killing his mother. That's the only through line. Because he, there's a scene where she insists that he come out of bed with her and take off his clothes and hold her because she's scared of the storm. And he gets an erection, so he like runs out and hides in his own bed. And then she gets angry at him because he's got like it's not even a porn magazine, it's just an old catalogue, but it's like lingerie. And she gets very upset at him for it. Tim has no thoughts. Okay.
Great scene. Wonderful.
So she makes him go out in the rain on his own to throw it out in the trash. But of course the other scene is that she makes him like dab her with like this,
like an ice cube.
well, there's not even that. It's like a scented water or something like that. But she says, use your fingers and start at my ankles, and he's like rubbing this stuff on her ankles, and she's like making like, she's like, oh yeah, she's like making little noises, and they end up like rolling around on the floor tickling each other, and like they're on top of each other, and then she gets mad at him for having an erection, and that's when she puts a dress on him and says that he's now a girl and that he should forget that his wee wee is for nothing but peeing. That's all it's used for. She yells at him. She has her own issues. She's clearly psychotic herself. Like, that's clear the whole time.
And this is like filmed very like almost like a playful romantic comedy kind of thing, like the way they're like kind of play fighting with each other and then stopping and looking into each other's eyes. Like it definitely does, like it is not like the look of you'd normally associate with a mother and son. It is more of a look of like two people that are about to hardcore make out. It
does. No, it has that feeling the entire time. She just keeps getting mad at him for stuff, but the way she speaks to him is so suggestive. The way she, I don't know, everything about it is just, it feels like putting a face to his mother takes a lot of the mystique out of like the potential of like what he is. And then the murder scenes themselves, outside, obviously the mother and this new boyfriend.
The new boyfriend is just like, it's so stupid. It's like, what is this guy doing here?
Yeah, he's just this really like cliched awful new boyfriend who's cracking a lot of sex jokes in front of him, and for some reason they're having like really loud sex even though they know he's like 2 rooms away. Like she's screaming her head off during sex, and it's like, it's just inconsiderate if nothing else.
Yeah, it's like one of those things that it's like such a movie thing where, I don't know, I guess technically there are probably real people like this in the world, but the way he was talking to Norman, it was just like what kind of person would say this to another person? It's like, very blatant, like, sex references and stuff here and there, and that's stupid.
Yeah. Norma's all, we're going to get married after he divorces his wife. And he's going to live here, yada yada yada. That's basically the whole thing, and there's a whole scene where he's trying to teach Norman how to box, but all he really does is he keeps hitting them and says, "Why aren't you fighting back, Norman? Why aren't you fighting back?" It's like they're prodding him. It's like they're trying to prod him into killing them. They're trying to provoke it almost. So they're shocked when he poisons them with strychnine. Jesus Christ. So, it even takes the mum down and puts her in the chair in the basement because she has to end up there, even though we know that the authorities do take her body because they bury her. We heard that in the first movie. She had a funeral.
Yeah. And I think it is like annoying when you do prequels like this, because like everything has to, like all this stuff that, from the first movie that you just kind of take for granted, like, oh, that's there, like it always has to have like a big importance in a prequel. So there's just so much stuff that it's like the movie is shouting at you like, see, he's wearing a dress now. Like, remember when he ends up wearing a dress in the first one, or like, look up, the mother's in the chair. Remember, that's the chair that she's in the the first one, the first movie, and like, I mean, it's like, oh look, he's reading a book about taxidermy. You get it. It's like, all right, come on, we get it.
Yeah, I hate that prequel stuff too. And they always do it. They can't help themselves. Everything has to have a meaning. Everything has to like have some significance. When no, that's what it was. That just happened to be what it was that he was doing, or what he used, or whatever.
Yeah, it's like prequels in general kind of just suggest like a lack of trust on the audience. Like we better flesh this out before the audience might not get it. But it's just like the laziest thing you can do with a story.
Yeah, the murder scenes. There's one early on. There's one near the. I almost feel like they intentionally split them up like this, so there'll be one like at either end of the movie. Because the first one is just like this girl about his age that wants to have sex with him. And he.
What's crazy about this movie is like it seems like every woman wants Norman.
Yes. Yes. But both victims in this movie are women who want him. And the second one, he's still the same age. He's still like a teenager, but it's this like 35-year-old.
Yeah.
Who really wants him.
And it's like he's such like a weird, creepy, aloof guy. Like it's weird to just see he looks like so like tense and like buttoned up, and he'll just be like staring off into space, and like these women are just throwing themselves at him like, oh man, I gotta have this like weird psychotic man that looks like he has no idea what's going on.
It's a mysterious element, Tim. It's like, he's so enigmatic.
I guess
I bet he's a wild stallion in the sack. So
I think the older lady, like they're making out, and like she has like a weird line, like she says like, oh, your tongue is like the memory of an elephant or something. Like what?
Which means long, I guess.
Maybe. I don't know.
Well, yeah, elephants have good memories, so
they say like an elephant never forgets or whatever. So I'm like, oh, is she like saying like your tongue didn't forget how to be in my mouth? Like, what does that mean?
I don't know. So the teenager, like, she like takes her clothes off, and like he's getting close to her, but he has to go off and there's almost a little twist here because you assume his mother's alive at this point, but the twist is this is actually taking place after he's already killed her. So this is kind of the first like put on the wig and dress and kill someone scene, and it's just an okay kill scene. He stabs her a bunch of times. It's kind of worth it for at the end when she's dead. The knife is just like sticking out of her chest, and there's like a bunch of stab wounds all over her chest. So that was okay. Although it was a bit weird how when he first starts stabbing her, he kind of goes for the shoulder first, which is kind of weird. Like the shoulder, I'll start there. That'll incapacitate her.
Well, he's young. He's learning. He hasn't mastered the art of stabbing yet.
Sure. Whereas the second woman, the older woman, later on is just kind of boring. It's just kind of a typical,
It's weird because like they're making out in the car, and then I think he says something like, hold on, I have to check on something, and then he leaves, and then the woman's just kind of doing her thing. She's checking her makeup or whatever, and then he pops up in the back of the car, which is like, there's like car doors are loud. Like how would he have managed to get in the back seat because fully dressed?
Serial killers have superpowers, Tim. Like once they become a serial killer, they can sneak around like better than anyone else. They become experts in stealth.
Is that the only way to get superpowers? Because I'll do anything I gotta do.
Oh no, what have I done? I've created a monster. Obviously the funny part here is that he actually doesn't kill her properly. She keeps waking up when he thinks he strangled her to death. And then even when he pushes the car in the water, because again, remember the visual of the car going in the water? We do that again, but she starts like banging from inside the trunk, and he's like, oh shit, she's still alive. But at this point the car's going in the water, so she's going to drown. So it's kind of this weird, darkly comical like death, where she keeps being alive until obviously she's not going to be anymore. But so that was kind of amusing for what it was. And that's basically all the flashbacks. Like I feel like we've went through them quite quickly, but ultimately they don't really feel to do much of anything of note outside of the one or two scenes where the Mama Bates gets a bit more erratic and crazy.
Yeah,
it's really just for the performance of her more than anything that you're kind of watching this stuff. But the actual main plot of the movie is that Norman's calling into the radio show because he thinks he has to kill again. We learn throughout the course of the film that his wife is pregnant, and he thinks that he will pass on his evil killer, like, psychotic genes, and because of that, he thinks he has to kill his wife. And at first we don't know who's going to kill, and then it becomes clear he's talking about his wife, and the host is trying to talk him out of it, and so on. Eventually he reveals who he really is, because at first he's just like, call me Ed, but eventually he's like, yeah, I'm Norman Bates, and they've already kind of figured it out by that point because of the details that he's mentioned are so famous. It's like, oh wait, I think this is Norman Bates. So that's kind of that. And then ultimately, like, we see his wife a couple of times, and she's like a therapist. It's kind of like a reverse Joker Harley Quinn, where the therapist makes the Joker sane. In this case, she's made Norman sane and married him, which is a bit weird, but sure, whatever.
Sure.
I think it's one of the problems of this movie actually is you just don't. I don't think you ever quite buy that Norman did this. Like, he became normal and had a wife and lived in a house in a normal street and all that stuff. And even if you are going to do that, then okay, fine, but that's such an insane premise, is that I wish the whole movie was about that. Give me the whole movie where he's talking to his neighbors and he's like trying to like keep his psychotic tendencies under wraps. Like, that would be way more interesting than him being on the phone the whole time, the radio.
Definitely.
But yeah, ultimately he lures the wife out to the house at the motel, and he's going to try and kill her. And what really made me laugh here is that he chases her around a little bit with a knife, and she's really scared, and she's trying to talk him out of it, and he actually makes the choice not to. He does, he's standing next to her with the knife, and he's going to do it, and then he drops the knife. And what really made me laugh here is that the music swells up, like he just like like this is something that should be celebrated, and then she hugs him and kisses him, and I'm like, he just ran around the house trying to kill you. It doesn't matter that he decided not to. You should still not want to be alone with him anymore. You should be terrified of him for a while. Well, you should leave him immediately.
I kept saying the same thing. Like, it's supposed to be this big romantic thing, like, oh, isn't it so great that the guy that was chasing his wife around with a knife decided not to kill her? Like, isn't that romantic? It's like, no, you should like very much leave this man and never let him get near you and your child ever again.
Yeah. Because she's like, oh no, but I never raised a killer. I didn't come from killers, so I'll raise him right, and it'll be fine, Norman. The actual climax of the movie is that Norman tries to burn down the house, which he succeeds in doing, but he starts having like these weird flashback ghost moments where all the characters we've seen in the flashback start appearing to him, and he gets so distracted by this that he ends up trapped inside the house as it's burning. And I'd never seen Psycho 4 before, so I was like, oh, does he die at the end? Is this the ending of it? He actually does eventually get out. He gets through the cellar door in the basement that goes outside, but a lot of this is him like falling like through the stairs and dodging flames, and it's like so not the ending of a Psycho movie. And then I laugh because it cuts to the morning and the firemen are all leaving, all the firefighters are leaving after putting the fire out, but for some reason like he's like got his arm over his wife and they're sort of limping from the building as if they've just left, as if they just got out. It's almost as if this is just them walking from like escaping the building, except it's the next morning and the firemen have already put the fire out. So why are they further up the stairs? Why are they walking from the house up that? I don't know. It was weird. And then and the ending's just basically, oh, now we can move on and live happily ever after. And there you go.
Yeah, I think he's like, I'm finally free.
Yeah,
like,
of course. There's one shot of the door where you just hear mother laughing, and then you hear a baby crying, implying that maybe his baby will be a killer, and then the credits roll, and that's it. That's the movie.
Yeah. It's, I mean, granted he didn't kill anyone, but he's probably still going to go away for arson. I feel like, even if you do own the property, I feel like you can't just get away with burning something down.
That's an interesting question. I feel like it's you would get at least a charge because it's reckless, because you're not a professional, demolition expert essentially. You have to do it officially and properly, but It would probably be far less severe than like trying to burn someone else's house down, though.
Oh sure, yeah.
Right.
And then, and like I mentioned earlier, like the radio stuff is like such an important part for like the first 2/3 of the movie that I kept expecting like it to be something where like, you know, they were going to track Norman down, or, you know, like, you know, they were going to go after him because they knew what he was going to do. And like, you know, maybe the therapist would be like, oh, he's probably going to go back to where this began. Like, let's go to the house and try to save the wife or whatever. Like, you know, something to have them involved because they're such like big, important characters. And then it's weird that, yeah, this whole like last little act just has nothing to do with them. And it's I mean, I don't think the idea of him burning the house down and getting rid of everything and then, you know, seeing like the ghosts of his past, like it's a fine idea, but it feels like it goes on so long. And especially when like he starts burning the house on the second floor and then like the first floor is already like engulfed in flames. Like, you know, he should just do like, you know, a little thing and then, you know, leave. Oh, and we didn't even mention too again the like dumb prequel stuff where he, you know, when he first goes back to the house and like he lifts up the floorboard and like there's the knife like in the house, like that was just very stupid. Like like
it's weird because like there was never like one specific knife that was his knife. It was just kind of like whatever. Like is this the knife he killed Marion with in the first movie? Like I don't know. Why would it be?
Like they're making it like it's some like big relic, like it's Freddy's glove or something. Like, you know, no, this is the knife that I need to kill people with. I've had it hidden all these years. But it's like, no, it's just yeah, he just used whatever knife was around.
It also looks far too clean. Like he pulls out the floorboard and it's like it's going through multiple cobwebs, yet the knife somehow looks very pristine. Like it's not been under there for like 30 years. So it didn't make much sense. Very, very odd. The movie, like, to me, the movie feels really weird in the sense that the flashbacks, which are clearly meant to be the heart of the movie in the sense that that's where the main plot is, like, they feel just so tacked on and kind of like, just like, oh, what's the obvious things we can do? And they feel like they're just from something else. And then the main, like, present day plot of the movie where he's talking at the radio station, like, that might actually be good, again, if it wasn't a Psycho movie, because at least it'd be like a new character and we'd be like, actually learning things about him. Because as it is in the movie, we don't really learn anything new, at least hardly anything, when he's talking to them. The only element that's new to us in the movie is the idea that he's married and what his present day situation's like. But there's not a lot to learn. You know, it's a couple of big details and then that's kind of it. Yeah. So that's very odd. So because of that, like the ending where he makes all these choices, like if the actual movie was like just set with him finding out that his wife is pregnant and then going through this thought process of like realizing that he wants to kill her, like that could just be an interesting movie on its own if it just focused on that the whole time. But instead, it revolves all this just around this radio show. It's one night, and it's most of the movie's made up of the flashbacks. So it feels like they've got about 30 minutes of a story, which is then padded out with an hour of flashbacks.
That sounds about right.
That's the way it feels.
Do you have the runtime on this? Because it felt long.
I think it's actually the shortest of the three movies. It's 96 minutes.
Really? If you would have told me this was 2 hours, I would not have second guessed you. Because it like, I mean, maybe because it is just stuff that's kind of, not super.
I tell a lie. Psycho 3 is actually 3 minutes shorter, so Psycho 3 just beats it. But okay. Psycho 2 was about an hour 15. The first Psycho, I think, was like 2 hours, if I remember right.
I mean, it is surprising me because this felt really long. Again, especially like that ending sequence felt like it just kept going. Yeah, I don't know. It's like it's not the hardest like movie to watch. It just is like, it's very unnecessary. It's not great.
It's just, it feels so ill-advised and kind of pointless. It just, it doesn't really have anything in it that feels like this was the idea you had. It very much feels like one of those sequels where we just want to have a movie that's called Psycho 4. What thing can we throw together that justifies that title? And yeah, it's easily the worst one. It feels if I mean, I don't know if I want to say it's quite like Freddy's Dead, Jason Goes to Hell. Like, I think it's probably not as bad as those. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like quite the slap in the face to the franchise that those movies feel like, but it does feel like one of those redundant sequels that it's just there to exist. It's there to like make more money off the name. And there's nothing really in it that feels like a good idea. It doesn't feel like, oh, I had this great, this great concept for how it can, because Psycho 2 feels like that. Psycho 2 feels like, oh, I've got this great idea of how to continue that story. It could be about Norman trying to be healthy and normal, and like, are the killings him? Like, has he been tempted into killing again? And we'll sort of try and, because Psycho 2 does that thing where you're kind of rooting for him. You want him to not be the killer. You kind of like care about him, and I feel like this movie wants you to care about him, but you never do. Not in the same way you did in Psycho 2.
Definitely not.
I just can't pull it off. It's just not possible. So it's a rough time.
Yeah.
Not the worst thing I've ever seen by any means, but
Sure.
So I joked actually when we did Psycho 3 that my ratings went from 10 to 8 to 6, and theoretically the next one should be 4 out of 10. So now that we're going to rate the movie, I guess I'd ask you, like, what are you rating it?
I think I'm gonna go 3.5. There's not really much here. I mean, a few interesting things, like the framing device isn't bad. Like some of the kills are fine. Anthony Perkins, like it's always great to see him. So at least he's there, and then like the radio people are good too. So there's enough there to be like, all right, fine, whatever. But there isn't much else to really put it over the top there.
Fun enough, my joking about giving it a 4 to keep the trend going, I think is kind of in the ballpark. I don't know if I necessarily want to go down to like a 3 or 3.5 like you. I think the movie is made in a very boring, serviceable way. It's easily the worst direction of the 4 movies as well. Sorry, Mick Garris, but like there's nothing in here that was visually interesting or it felt like a suspenseful sequence. Everything's it definitely feels like made for TV. It feels very dull in its execution. They could be making moments out of some of this, and they don't. It's just very, like, just basic coverage, nothing all that interesting going on. And so, it's not the worst thing ever, though. It's not like it's super hard to watch, but it's just really boring. And it feels pointless. So I guess I will go with a 3. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10.
Nice. Fair. It's just a shame that like this is how it how it ends. I mean, like, it obviously goes, there's other stuff like the remake and the TV show, but really when you're thinking of like the actual franchise, this is where it ends. And
this is the last with Anthony Perkins. Like everything else that comes after this is a spin-off. It's just like, okay, we're tying it into the Psycho franchise, but the real Psycho franchise is the 4 movies. And debatably, you might even not even counting this one if you if you really want to. But...
And then and it just sucks because everything other than this was like a surprise, like a kind of like a delightful surprise. Like obviously everyone's talked about the first one to death, so that's a quality film, that's a classic and stuff. But then you don't hear the other ones talk so well. So when I was watching this, like for the first time, I forget if it was earlier this year or like late last year, but when I was watching it, it was like, oh wow, like Psycho 2 is actually really good. Like who would have thought? That's actually pretty cool. Then Psycho 3 being like, all right, not as good as the last one, but this is still kind of fun. I'm still kind of liking this. And then you get here and it's just like, oh, okay, this is where we're stopping.
This is where the ideas ran out. And maybe Anthony Perkins had to, if he directed what he wanted to for the 4th one, maybe we'd have gotten something more worthwhile. But it's a weird one. It's always been like Psycho's this classic, and I feel like the sequels kind of get lost in the shuffle. Where, you know, when you think of Friday the 13th and you think of Nightmare on Elm Street and Halloween, you do think of the franchise. You think of it as a whole, even though in most cases, like, the original is the one that you care about. Although that's not really true in Friday the 13th. But with Psycho, I really feel like, yeah, you think of Psycho, the Hitchcock movie, you think of the classic, and you don't necessarily think of it as a franchise in a way. Because I remember back in like DVD days where I was seeing a lot of this stuff for the first time, and I was buying the box sets, and I was like, okay, I want to see all these movies, so I'll buy this box set. I never considered buying the Psycho box set. For some reason, I just never cared about seeing the sequels. When I was at that age, for some reason, and it's only, you know, when Scream Factory put out the Blu-rays for 2 and 3 that I thought, yeah, I'll give them a chance, and that's why I'd seen 2 and 3, but I'd never seen 4 because they didn't put out 4. Plus, I'd heard 4 was the bad one. I'd heard 4 was like, nah, this is the one that if you don't have to watch it, you could you know, leave it be.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I guess that's. Tim's done talking about it, so I guess it's time to wrap up the episode.
I don't, and it's like normally when we finish a franchise, usually like we'll do like a quick ranking of them, but I don't even know if it's necessary with this. Like,
no, because they're literally in the order of when they got made. So Psycho's the best one, Psycho 2's next, then Psycho 3, and then at the bottom Psycho 4. Easy peasy. It doesn't get easier than that. So yeah, that's basically it. I forgot that we usually rank. It's been so long since we finished the franchise. I forgot that we rank. But yeah, I guess that's it. I guess that's the second franchise. So this was a franchise for this year for the Octoberthon. You know, because we like to do like a smaller franchise. It's 3 or 4 movies in the month in one go, and wrap them up. So next year we'll have another one. I've got 1 or 2 in mind that I'd like to do, but obviously we did one for the bonus episodes. This obviously I'm going to tell you about patreon.com/MailFuzzTV in a minute. In fact, I'll do it now. Patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You can support us for as little as $1 per month. And for that $1, you get a bonus episode every month. But for the Octoberthon month, you've had 4 bonus episodes. You had the entire Wishmaster franchise. And we'll probably do, again, something similar next year. We'll do like a whole trilogy or maybe a quadrilogy of movies. Or if we can't think of a quadrilogy, we'll just do maybe a couple of double features or something like that. You know, something that's where there's only 2 movies in this franchise. We'll do 2 sets of 2 or something like that. I don't know. Yeah,
I think there's still a few shorter ones that we can tackle, but hey, you gotta wait for next year for that. Yep. Honestly, I think like trilogies, I think used to be the big thing. Like everyone wanted to have like the trilogy, like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Matrix and stuff. But honestly, I think quadrilogies are where it's at. I think 4 is like the new perfect number. I think that's a cool number for movies. 4, it's good.
That's like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and
sure.
Superman 4 and we're getting Matrix 4 soon now apparently, so we'll see how that shapes out.
I'm weirdly excited for that. I think that might be good.
Do you know what? It's been so long that it may end up being much better than 2 and 3, because 2 and 3 are not good movies. So maybe they'll do like the proper true sequel. After all this time, I don't know. But yeah, so yeah, Psycho's an interesting little franchise, and I say a little because I think the franchise is little because the sequels are often just not even talked about. Obviously, the original is not little because it's one of the biggest movies of all time, but well, there you go.
And it just feels weird because we've been going through this and then doing Wishmaster for the Patreon, and then it's like I don't know, I just like weirdly have these movies linked in my head now. Well, Wishmaster and Psycho. It
doesn't help that we've been recording them in pairs. We did Psycho and Wishmaster together, then we did Psycho 2 and Wishmaster 2 together. So for some reason I oddly associate the 2 franchises now, even though they have nothing to do with each other and have no correlation whatsoever. But no, there you go. So as for other things to tell you about, obviously make sure you check out the other stuff we've been doing this month. Like and subscribe. Give us a good rating on your Apple Podcast or your podcast app of choice. Helps more people find us if you give us a 5-star review on there. And Yeah, especially I already mentioned Patreon, so yeah. So hopefully you're having a fun October. We're nearing the end of it now. Just a few things left to do. A couple more movies, some more countdown and results episodes to round out the month. So hopefully you've been having fun. So thank you very much for watching or listening. We appreciate it. We always do. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and we will see you next time.